disappointed in people claiming to be Christians, and then I see what they like to take part in. I see the movies they like to watch. I see the filth they allow in their homes. I see the immodesty that they display when they go, say, to the beach. Isn't it up to us to just exemplify the attractiveness of godly living, of obedient, godly living? If we don't do it, who's going to? Then perhaps when we do that, our salt will produce a thirst for righteousness. Let me share some pictures with you. And I put a warning up here. Let me warn you, these are teenage beach pictures. Haven't we seen the debauchery that goes on, and somebody come along with a video camera and convince these young girls to do all sorts of terrible things in front of the camera, exposing themselves literally. And so when I say I'm about to show you some teenage beach pictures, I'm just giving you this warning. Here, these young Christians are out on the beach, having a great time. And I can show you pictures of them without worrying about what you're about to see. Just some beautiful and handsome young Christian people having a big time, and yet they are the salt of the earth. You know, it can be done. It can be done. We can be the kind of people we ought to be. Here, a couple of the guys out having a good time. But notice how they're dressed. Not immodest at all. And so we see these young people, and we are reminded, and it's such a stark contrast of what we see all around us. Young people need to understand, and we need to help show they can have a good time, have a lot of fun, and yet remember who they are. They are Christians. They are Christians. They are God's people. And as such, they exemplify those traits wherever they are. Whether they're sitting at the church building or they're down on the beach, they are always God's people. What a great looking group of young people. I'm very fortunate to know most, if not all, of these young people. And I wanted to include this too. You think those are some pretty proud parents of at least two of those young people? They're the ones that got them together, went on this trip, and they just had a blast. I'm telling you, we are to be the salt of the earth. You know, salt is penetrating. Again, you can't just put it in a pretty shaker and set it on the shelf and expect it to do any good. But I tell you what, when it is mixed in and rubbed in and put to work, there's no doubt that it's there. It is there. It goes all through whatever it is you put it on, doesn't it? But it's got to be put to use. It's got to be mixed in, rubbed in. Romans chapter 12 and verse 6. It says, having then gifts differing according to the grace that has been given to us, let us use them. Notice that phrase, let us use them. If prophecy, let us prophesy in proportion to our faith. Or ministry, let us use it in our ministering. He who teaches in teaching. He who exhorts in exhortation. He who gives with liberality. He who leads with diligence. He who shows mercy with cheerfulness. Whatever the gift of God is that He's given to us, and I'm not talking about those miraculous gifts that in the first century they had, but the gifts that we're given today, whatever gifts, whatever talents God has given to you, notice He says, let us use them. Salt is penetrating, but we've got to put it to use. You know, we can't avoid interaction with the world, nor with each other, can we? And so when we are mixing and mingling, when we are associating either with other Christians or with those of the world, we've got to have a positive influence, a positive impact wherever we are. Notice Romans chapter 14 and verse 19. It says, therefore, let us pursue the things which make for peace, and the things by which one may edify another. People are pursuing everything but, aren't they? But let us, Christian, let us pursue the things which make for peace. People just, don't you see people who live for gossip, who live to stir up trouble, to cause problems? No, let us pursue the things which make for peace. Now, part of the peace people need is the peace that comes with the right relationship with God. Because otherwise we are at enmity with God. But we need to be at peace. And Jesus Christ, of course, is our avenue to be at peace with God. But not only the things that make for peace, and the things by which one may edify another. What does it mean to edify? It means to build up, doesn't it? And so we need to pursue things that make for peace and things that edify. That's being the salt of the earth, isn't it? That's the way salt works to have its preserving influence. Now, speaking of the preserving influence, and you might want to be turning to Luke chapter 14, we need to make sure we preserve our salt. The Lord warned us about that in that first passage that we looked at. What if we lose our seasoning? It's good for nothing but to be thrown out, trampled underfoot by men. And so we need to be careful. But in Luke chapter 14 and in verse 34, again it says in Luke's account, he says salt is good. But if the salt has lost its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? You can't make it good again as far as salt goes. It is neither fit for the land nor for the dunghill, but men throw it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. The Lord, when he tacks on that statement, he who has ears to hear, he's really saying, listen up. Listen up. Don't turn your ear off. Don't turn a deaf ear to what I'm saying. See, Jesus' words about this, about salt in this passage, come on the heels of warning. As you look at Luke chapter 14, and you're starting at verse 25, he has some hard sayings, some challenging statements he's making here. He speaks of utter and complete devotion to discipleship, at the same time cautioning that we must count the cost. He says in verse 26, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, and he goes on to talk about when you're starting a project, you're going to sit down and count the cost to make sure you're able to finish it. The same way with the king going to war. And so in verse 33, so likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he